Welcome to Category Visionaries, the show dedicated to exploring exciting visions for the future from the founders who are on the front lines building it. In each episode, we'll speak with a visionary founder who's building a new category or reimagining an existing one. We'll learn about the problem they solve, how their technology works, and unpack their vision for the future. I'm your host, Brett Stapper, CEO of Frontlines Media. Now let's dive right into today's episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Category Visionaries. Today we have a very exciting episode for you. Today we're speaking with Shreesha Ramdas, CEO and co-founder of Lumber, a construction workforce management platform that's raised over $21 million in funding. Shreesha, how are you?
Doing great, Brett. Good to meet and chat with you.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this. So let's just talk about the big question, construction. How'd you end up building construction technology?
Yeah, so I have been part of early team at startups, built my own startups, and it's always been geared towards tech vertical. And I was at that point in my life, Brett, where I was like, I've served the tech industry for a long time. Let me go into an industry where I feel challenged. I feel the adrenaline rush back once again, where there's massive digital transformation still yet to be done. And I was hunting for such an industry, and I met my co-founder who had led construction engineering at Oracle. So he and our early team had actually built P6, the Primavera cloud version. And he was the one who said, if you're looking for an industry that needs massive transformation, look at construction. And so then what I did, Brett, was I hired an SDR on my payroll. I asked her to set up around 200 meetings with construction firms of different size and kept having wonderful conversation with all these owners. And I saw a few trends that were happening. One was there was change of guard. So a lot of the construction firms were started by construction folks who had worked in a construction company, came out and decided to do their own. And now they were at that phase where they were transitioning over to the next generation. And the next generation were coming on board and saying, why is the process so antiquated? Well, modern technology is not there. So I could see that trending. And then the other one is a lot of the construction firms, founders, firm owners were talking about how difficult it is to get workers. And a lot of the workers were retiring. And so institutional knowledge was getting lost. And the new folks who were coming in, they did not have experience. They all started as apprentice. And so there was a lot of training to be done. There was a lot of experiences that need to be transferred over. And so that's what inspired me to get into the construction industry.
And what did that outreach look like? Because you're obviously a Silicon Valley guy. Like, why did these construction companies meet with an SDR doing outreach for a Silicon Valley guy saying, hey, we want to have a conversation? Like, why did they give you the time?
Yeah, so this is where, Brett, we were a little bit creative. We know that we have to prove what's in it for them before we ask for time. So what I instructed my SDR was like, be creative. And I offered her couple of options. One, if construction owner valued, experience or exposure, then we offer them an industry guide that talks about what are the best practices in the industry and how best-in-class construction firms are going about architecting their technology landscape. So that was one offer. So you provide us your experience, you provide us the gaps that you're seeing in your construction firm, you talk about what are your technology initiatives, and we will share with you what the industry is talking about. That's one offer. The second was basically, if you provide us time and then whatever technology we architect, we come up with, we'll make sure that we will give you 1 year free service. So that was the other offer that we experimented with, and whatever worked, we would get them on a call.
I see. So it wasn't, hey, jump on a call and just, share some insights with us. We're trying to understand the market. You had actual value to offer them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we appealed to the early innovator in them. We said that, listen, we believe that we are spearheading a movement in the industry that will benefit the industry. How about you being one of the early adopters, right? And do your bit to the industry.
I can see how that resonates with a certain class of buyer where they want to be the early adopter. So that makes perfect sense. So you have 200 plus calls. You learn a bunch about the state of the market. What comes next? What do you do after that?
So once I synthesized that everybody is feeling the pinch on the worker side, And in fact, one of the stats that came about was 41% of the workforce are going to retire in next 7 years. So by 2031, 41% of the workforce will be gone. And that's when got inspired by the vision that we are building actually a workforce solution for an industry that's highly regulated, that has blue collar workers and a lot of physical operations. And so that was the mission statement that we started with. And then we said, okay, what are the products that can fulfill this vision that we have, which is we are going to automate the workforce. And we came up with our initial product set, which is time tracking, payroll, benefits, schedule, and dispatch. And we then started painting the vision on a deck. We raised capital. Once we raised capital, initial capital, we got the team. This is my fourth startup, as I shared with you, Brett. So I had a team that I'd worked with, comfortable with. We all synchronize well with each other. It was time to get the band back together.
That's amazing. When did you come up with the name Lumber? It's an incredible name. When did you come up with that or decide to use that?
Yeah. So when we decided to build a solution for the construction industry, I wanted a name that resonates well with the industry and then inspire people as well. So my previous startup I had sold to Medallia, and Medallia was fantastic company to learn brand building and storytelling. And when my previous company got acquired and I went into Medallia, I was like, I'm going to be a student. I'm going to learn how Medallia, that was started by a husband and wife team, bootstrapped for 10 years, then got Sequoia as their lead investor. How did it build such a big brand? And Brett, what was amazing about Medallia was its first customer was Hilton. How can a small company without credibility of having been in the business for a long time attract Hilton as a customer? And when I went deep on that, I learned it was all attributed to a powerful storytelling, great brand building. And so I was a student there. And so I learned that a good brand can go a long way in establishing a company. It can assist in your sales team in selling the product better. And so I was very particular about having a strong, powerful brand name, one that can be used as a verb. And so I was like, what are the successful companies out there? And it was Twitter, Tinder, Uber. And I said, what follows next? Lumber. And then lumber has a strong resonance in the construction industry because you take any construction site, the foundation, especially here in California, the foundational element is lumber, wood. And that's how the lumber word came about. And I visualized it being used as a verb where one construction owner is telling the subcontractor, I'll lumber you the payment or lumber me these documents, right? That's how it being used as a verb, just how you use the word slack. Slack me the dock or let me slack you. That's how the word lumber came about. And the other aspect about lumber, Brett, was if you slice a tree, you will get contours in it that signifies the age of the tree. The circles in a wood signifies how long the tree has been there. And so that became our logo where it's a slice of the wood where the circle denote, talking about how long lumber as a company has been around.
And was this all from your time at Dahlia, where you really learned the art of branding, the art of storytelling? Or did you already have some of these skills when you were going into it and just really got your PhD there in how to do branding and how to do storytelling?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brett. So the first company, I was purely an engineering guy. All I cared about is engineering, architecting well, and building a good product. And I used to curse all the salespeople in our company. These guys go and sell the product, sell the vision, and then we have to implement it, right? We have to customize the product. We have to configure the product. They have their own needs. And then we have to figure out how do we fulfill that gap, right? That was my impression about the sales team. My next company was where I really understood about sales because I was in the forefront. I was a founder who had to sell the product that I had built. And I understood how difficult sales is. You have to influence people who are outside your organization. One of the toughest roles. So, and then the third company that I did, I learned the importance of marketing in terms of demand generation, right? So, demand generation team does a great job. The life of a salesperson becomes easier. And so then I would say the continuing that evolution, Medallia was all about storytelling and brand building that I learned at Medallia.
This show is brought to you by Frontlines Media, a podcast production studio that helps B2B founders launch, manage, and grow their own podcast. Now, if you're a founder, you may be thinking, I don't have time to host a podcast. I've got a company to build. Well, that's exactly what we built our service to do. You show up and host, and we handle literally everything else. To set up a call to discuss launching your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. Now, back to today's episode. And the marketing program or the marketing strategy, can you paint a picture for us of what your marketing strategy looks like today and any evolutions that have happened so far?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I learned the value of marketing a couple of startups earlier. And so, in fact, I like to think that, if there are CEOs in the Silicon Valley who are either product first or sales first, as you know, it's one of the other. I am marketing first. So I think about everything that we do at Lumber, like how can we leverage that from the marketing perspective? How does this activity lend itself for a marketing campaign? That's how I think. So right from the word go, I brought in marketing folks who had worked with me before at Strike Deck that I sold to Medallia and Lead Farming that became part of SAP. And so from the word go, we were very confident about one strategy. It's content always works, right? So the more content you create, the more credibility of the company. That's one. The second marketing tack that we know always worked was having a strong website, having a larger than life appeal. So right from word go, we wanted to have a website that talked about our vision in a strong way, that explained really well why we started Lumber, right? And also had a lot of videos, a lot of white papers, all of that were part of the website. So the marketing team got started on that from day one. We had a blog where we did blog content. And then we also had a podcast right from day one, that where we interviewed construction owners and asked them to talk about, how did they build the construction firms? What were the challenges when they scaled their construction companies? So content creation was strong, was a foundational element of our marketing program. Beyond that, we started understanding where the construction owners spending time. And we realized that a lot of them went to a lot of the events, conferences, trade shows that were happening. And so then we started attending the trade shows to gain experience. So we pretty much, started attending ABC, which is an association in the construction industry. Their events, we started attending T, which was meant for general contractors. So while ABC was more geared towards specialty contractors, trade contractors, AGC was geared towards larger general contractors. We started going to specific trade shows. So, for example, NECA, which is the National Electrical Contractors Association, they have their own shows geared towards electrical contractors. Similarly, there were shows that were geared towards HVAC contractors. So events and conferences, trade shows became one of a key marketing activity for us. So early on, when we just raised a seed money, we didn't have money to have a booth, we would go and participate in the event. We would try to sponsor after the event is done, some happy hour in collaboration with another construction software company. So we could split the cost, but have enough people coming at us. So a lot of guerrilla growth hack tactics back then. That's how we got started. Even today, events basically give us about 30% of our leads. So top of the funnel, they contribute 30%. Today, of course, we have larger program, having raised Series A recently. We go into the conferences with a booth strategy, and then we think about what are the other campaigns that we can do around booth. So about 2 months before the event, we start our outreach. We get the list of all the people who had attended the event the previous year. We find out how many of them are coming back. We then do some promotional activity. Either we will sponsor an event ticket free, or we will ask that you register at an after party, after the event, a party that we sponsoring, throw it as an incentive that we will reserve a seat for you. So we try to get as many signups before we even show up the event. And then at the event, we will have the right promotional activity talking about the swag that we have, and we will have a spin wheel and all of those tactics that tries to engage the folks who are attending the event and are stopping by the booth. And then after the event is over, then we have the follow-ups. We have an SDR reaching out and making sure that they understand the value proposition that lumber is and why they should sign up for a demo. All of that happens. And then, Brett, also one aspect we will talk about that we have learned attending the events, it's very important to try to book a demo session with the person who's stopping by at the event itself, and now not leave it as a follow-up event, because these guys, construction professionals, are also busy. They're busy constructing, they're busy building structures. So it's great to get a time earmark right there at the event, at the conference, while you have them with you.
What else have you seen that just really works with events? That's a super useful and tactical piece of advice. What else can you recommend that founders should be thinking about when they're thinking events? And then, of course, thinking, how do I actually stand out and get value from this event?
Yeah. So first thing is you have to plan well for the event. You cannot just show up for the event. I think that itself, you need a little bit of experience and maturity to realize that. If you think that you're going to show up to an event and people will stop by, that's wrong, right? So that'll not happen and you will have a subpar performance at the event. So you should plan well. You should think about who are the folks coming to the event? What should be my event design? What should be my booth design? Where should I pick the booth itself? So you need to be strategic with that. Can you have a booth which is closer to the full that's being served, right? Because there will be more traffic. If you have a booth at the periphery, then good luck with people showing up to your booth, right? So those kind of strategizing planning is really important to have a phenomenal event. So that's important. And then also, who will be attending the event on your behalf, right? Will it be a partnership person? Will it be salespeople who are great in hunting? Will it be product person who are great in doing the demo? So you need to plan. And then at the event, you need to make sure that you are visible. So for example, Brett, one of the event, we actually raised our entire booth a little bit so that we can be visible even by folks who are just entering the conference room, right? So tactics like that, or having a balloon, or getting a vehicle to brand with your logo and come and get parked outside the conference center. So you really need to think of how do you amp up your visibility and your presence at the event. And then, as I said, like once the event is done, your work is not done. You have to have like next 60 days dedicated to do following up and making sure that all the leads that you gathered from the event, you touch them. Those lead age faster than anything else.
Let's talk a little bit about the podcast. As a big time podcast for myself, I'm very passionate about podcasting. I always like to learn more. What is the podcast, specifically about? Who are you interviewing? Who's hosting? And then what have you learned just as an organization from having this podcast?
Absolutely. Brett, so I'll start with the fact that I'm a big fan of podcast strategy. In fact, I would advocate almost every startup that's out there to think about podcast as a content strategy. And, I'll tell you personally, I've become a big fan of this podcast called Acquired. If you've not heard, then it's a must.
So good.
And the funny thing, Brett, with the Acquired podcast is that it goes contrarian to this belief that podcasts and video content need to be short form. Acquired is pretty long and it's still so engaging. So that shows that well-produced content goes a long way in establishing your brand, your credibility, and so on. So my fascination with podcast started with my previous startup at Strike Deck, customer success platform. We had our own podcast. And I actually asked a partner of ours to become the host of our podcast. And we saw a lot of success there. With my previous startup, also, I was competing with a company called Gainsight. And Gainsight was amazing in terms of content creation, community building. They had their own annual conference from very early on. So a lot of inspiration also came from Nick Mehta, who was the CEO of Gainsight. And so when we started with Lumber, I was very clear we need to have a podcast that serves the community, that serves the industry well. And this was when I started brainstorming with our founding team that included Lou Perez, our sales leader. And he got excited with the whole podcast as well, because he started his career as a carpenter in the industry and then moved over to sales and then moved over to lumber. And he was like, I want to bring value to the industry myself, and I can talk to these construction owners from my experience, right? How I went about in my construction career. And so we were brainstorming about the name, and the name we came up was Builder Upper Show. So it's for the builders. And, with the residential contractors, they're always doing fixer upper. And so the Builder Upper Show seemed apt. And so we started with that. And there we started interviewing construction owners and going through what led them to start a company. How was their journey with the company once they got started, right? What were the challenges? How did they scale? How do they think about transitioning it to the next generation? So those were the issues that we started focusing on that. And it was really fun. And it was a lot of learning, Brett. It was learning because we had just started our journey. As we heard construction owners talk about their challenges, we leveraged those learnings, those lessons in building our product as well, right? We didn't think about selling in those, as a main strategy for the podcast. It was all about learning from their experience. So that's why I think the Builder Upper Show has worked really well. That inspired us to actually start our second podcast, which is called Lumberyard. And that's Jen, who's more focused towards all the women folks who are there in the construction, because all the construction owners talked about we want more women to come and join the industry. Today, it's not represented well. And with so many workers retiring, we need more Gen Z, we need more women coming into the industry. And so that's where Lumberyard, the podcast by Jen, got started. So that's basically the history behind Lumber and the podcast that we have.
This show is brought to you by the Global Talent Co., a marketing leader's best friend in these times of budget cuts and efficient growth. We help marketing leaders find, hire, vet, and manage amazing marketing talent for 50 to 70% less than their US and European counterparts. To book a free consultation, visit globaltalent.co.
Two great names, but at this point in the conversation, I'm no longer surprised. I feel like you're just very, very good at naming things. So it meets the expectations.
Thank you. We are proud about our names.
You do great names. Now, you'd mentioned that 30% of the leads are coming from events. What is the next, kind of pie chart? If we're looking at a pie chart, what's the next biggest sliver besides events?
Yeah. So besides events, we have also realized that the construction industry has got a lot of value-added resellers, partner channels that operate in the industry. And so we think partner marketing is going to be the next big thing that's going to drive leads for us. And so we are trying to establish more and more partnerships. We are trying to establish marketing relationships with these partner firms. That's been our endeavor. We are also right now doing some early experiments with paid ads. That's basically Google and other websites driven paid campaigns that we are doing experiments with. We have not yet seen much success. We have not scaled these channels, but those are also on the horizon. And then we also have been doing email campaign. So we have now a weekly newsletter that goes out to all the construction folks who subscribe for content on our website. That we have seen some success with there. Overall, marketing, I believe, Brett, in today's world, we need to be experimental. We need to experiment with a bunch of channels, with a bunch of different content themes and see what's working, and based on it, scale the ones that are working and be ruthless in killing the ones that are not yielding results.
What about the market category that you're in? If you spend this much time thinking about marketing, this much time thinking about naming and branding, you have to have strong opinions about category. How are you thinking about the category that you're in?
Yeah, again, a great question. I'm a big believer in establishing a category, because if you're able to establish a category, then people are allocating budget towards a category. And that makes the life of a salesperson easier. And so if you think about construction, if you think about a startup that has scaled in recent times really well, the name that comes to your mind is Procore. And Procore is all about field. They care about what's happening in the field, the productivity in the field, and all the workflows that happen at the field level. We are all about back office. So if you think about construction, any construction firm, the back office is always thinly staffed. There are not that many people manning the back office. But if you look at their workload, they're always overwhelmed. If for some reason they are delayed in making a payment to a worker, the worker will not show up in the industry. Construction is also highly regulated industry in US, and some of the states have on the top even more regulations. That include California, that includes Illinois, that includes New York, New Jersey area, Hawaii. All of these areas have strong state regulations that are on top of your regulations. If you are working in the construction area that has anything to do with the government, for example, you're building a school in a school district, then you have to adhere to the prevailing wage laws that are there, right? So all these complications make life of a back office staff super complicated, super stressful. And so the category that we are going after is we are serving for the back office. That's the persona, right? So back office payroll, admins, controllers, CFOs, we are here to make their life easy. We are here to serve that category. So that's the immediate category that are the professionals we serve.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, they in turn are serving the workers. So ultimately, we are serving workers. So we see two cost points for our products. One is the back office who actually live in our product, but then they have to make a difference to their users, that is worker. So ultimately, how do we design the experience for the worker? That's how we look at our category.
Now, when I think about construction tech, I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, but maybe 5, 10 years ago, it didn't seem that sexy. It didn't seem that cool. Didn't seem like there was a lot of money there. Now it seems like there's a lot more money going into construction tech, which means there's going to be a lot more founders. What advice would you have for founders that are going into construction tech or just trying to build construction tech?
Yeah, that's an amazing question, Brett, because you're absolutely right. Construction as a category for investment did not have a great reputation even till about 2 years ago. And that's because toughest thing about construction industry is change management. The construction folks, the owners, the field workers, the back office, they are all busy towards one activity, which is creating the structure. They're busy constructing things and they take a lot of pride in what they are building. If a construction owner is driving on a highway, then to their family, they will point out all the buildings that they have either contributed to or responsible for building it out. So they take immense pride, right? But because they are so busy in their day to day life, adopting a newer software, newer technology is not easy. Even till date, a lot of the workers are filling out manual timesheets. They are not using the apps on their phone and they are very reluctant to move on, right? So showing them the value with technology is not easy. Getting their mind share to move to a newer platform is not easy. So you will have to think about how do you do a great job on change management? How do you knock it out of the park on that front?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we have a time tracking application and we took that to the market, and there were a lot of the newer generation workers who are using the product. But as I pointed out, a lot of them were still using timesheets. And a lot of the construction firms were thinking about how do I put more formatting on the timesheet so that the workers adhere to the data what they need to fill in. And so we now have a tremendous opportunity with AI, right? And AI application on the vertical side is an amazing, amazing opportunity, Brett. That's the reason why a lot of investment is going into the vertical industries, and construction is a beneficiary of that trend. So going back to the example of where worker needs to fill out timesheets, they're doing it manually. With AI, like we now have over 94% confidence about taking the data that's filled out in a manual timesheet and converting it to a digital record. So now when I go to a construction firm, I can say, listen, we will ensure that change management is not a problem for you, because for your newer generation workers, for your workers who are comfortable with mobile phones and using apps on the mobile phone, we'll offer them our mobile application. For the folks who still want to stick to the timesheet, we will use AI to convert that into a digital record, manual timesheet over to a digital record. And then over the time, we will do education program, we will do awareness about how the workers who are using the mobile app are getting more hours in the day. And so thus we'll ensure that they move over to our newer platform. So change management is definitely the one thing that any newer startup going into the construction has to watch out for. And then, as I said, the big opportunity is how do you use AI to rewrite the existing rules in the construction industry? That's the massive opportunity. And you need to really look at the existing workflows, existing processes, existing templates, and then think fresh. Think about new ways of doing things and then build your products, tune your products to that.
I love that advice. That's probably some of the most tactical and actionable advice that I think we've ever had on the show when we asked that question. So tons of value there, not just for construction, but probably many industries and most industries. Now, let's end with a final question, a fun one. Vision. What's the big picture vision for everything that you're building today?
Yeah, so the way I'm looking at it is we are building truly the knowledge graph for the workers, which will serve the industry for years to come. So, for example, let's take an electrical contractor. There's a huge demand in US right now for electrical contractors because of all the data center work that's happening. The Facebook, the Metas, the Googles, the Amazons are all building data centers, and there's a huge demand for the electrical contractors. And so how do you prepare the next generation to go and do this work? So there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of educational programs that needs to happen. And the vision mission that I'm really excited about is bringing that knowledge, that training to the newer generation workers, getting students excited to come over to the construction world. That's really got me dreaming about the new age construction solutions that we can unleash.
Amazing. I love the vision. I've just really loved this conversation. I've learned a ton. I know the audience is going to learn a ton. Before we do wrap up here, if there's anyone that's listening in that just wants to follow along with you, the lumber journey, where should we send them?
Yeah, my LinkedIn page is always current. And so if they ping me on LinkedIn, I'm always there. Otherwise, my email address is shreesha@lumberfi.com. Our website, lumberfi.com, is pretty exhaustive in terms of our product, our value proposition to the industry as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you again for taking the time. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Brett.
This episode of Category Visionaries is brought to you by Frontlines Media, Silicon Valley's leading podcast production studio. If you're a B2B founder looking for help launching and growing your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. And for the latest episode, search for Category Visionaries on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.